It's hard to know exactly when it starts.
Oh, it started now. All right. Well, hello and welcome everybody to the Allma live stream. Today, I am joined by my co-host Pete Cheslock. I'm Joshua Timberman, and we have also with us a special guest, Doug Ireton, who joins us from Allma.
Hello,
Doug.
Doug,
thank you.
welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Glad
for
to be
joining
here.
us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, why don't you give us just a quick rundown, intro?
Who are you, Doug?
Yeah, who are you?
Sure. So I've been in IT for a long time, and started my career at Microsoft supporting MS DOS and like Windows 3.1 or something, a super long time ago as an intern. And then let's see. Most recently, I was at a company called One Strategy. Now is owned by Tech Systems, and was doing AWS consulting for about 5.5 years. And then recently joined Allma, which I'm very excited about, as an infrastructure engineer. So most of my career has been in ops and infrastructure, DevOps. I also started the Seattle CoffeeOps meetup, which is one of the largest DevOps meetups in the US. And so have a strong emphasis in my career on infrastructure and all things ops. So
cool. Let's wind it back a sec. What got you into tech in the first place? Like, what was the driving factor there?
My grandparents bought me a Commodore 64 when I was in, I don't know, elementary school or middle school or something, and just kind of got into it with that. I think I mostly played games on it, but but was interested in that. And then sort of I had a MIS major in college, so I had a little more exposure to that. And then I got an internship at Microsoft, and then it kind of just flowed from there. So because once you're in, it's a lot easier to just keep doing it. So
you just can't escape.
Yeah, can't escape.
There's
exactly
no way
right.
out. Yeah,
there's no way out.
That's right. So
cool. What is your favorite thing that favorite new development in, say, the last 10 years? Like you've been here long enough in tech, but in the last 10 years, like what's something that's really cool that has you jazzed about where we're going as an industry?
Well, I'm actually gonna say open source, which I know has been around longer than 10 years, but in terms of I was at Nordstrom. Nordstrom went from being pretty skeptical of open source, and that was quite a long time ago, but so maybe 10 years ago or so, to really embracing open source. And one of the things, so I think, and I got a chance when I was at Nordstrom to be part of the chef community, which is one of my very favorite open source communities. Made a lot of friends there. And just that, I think that sort of open source model of development and how that's been embraced now by all companies, I think pretty much wouldn't be hard to say that almost all companies are using open source, if not all companies are using open source. And that sort of getting comfortable with contributing back, and this is just a way that you do software now, I think has probably been the development that's most exciting to me, because it's tech, but it's also community and all of that. So
yeah, certainly something that speaks to my heart. I love I've been using Linux forever and love open source, and in the early days it was because it was free. Now it's because you have access to a whole world of all the code that you could possibly want, and the ability to build on top of that or adapt software as needed.
Yeah, for sure. I remember at Nordstrom, we were very early users of Chef, and the Windows support, there were some things missing that we needed to add, and we had the ability to just add those cookbook changes to make it better on Windows, and that was what we really needed. And to be able to contribute that back upstream was incredibly helpful for our business. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was always one of my favorite things, was when the tool when Chef the tool lacked functionality and somebody could just add that in via a cookbook change, and then we could, migrate that to the source repository itself for the product.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. So did your love for open source and community lead you to start CoffeeOps? Can you tell us more about what that is and what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's probably one of the things I'm probably most proud of in my career is starting Seattle CoffeeOps. So I got the idea really from Chef Community Summits and Jennifer Davis, who started CoffeeOps. And then, and I said, well, I want to start something in Seattle. The first meetup, I think it was just me. And then the second meetup, there's like one other person. But I stuck with it, week after week. And then now there's like 500 and some people in the Seattle CoffeeOps channel in the Slack workspace. So it's become a huge community. I really am excited that it's been going for so long and continues to meet every other week. And I see people get jobs out of it through their connections that they made in CoffeeOps. I see people get very practical questions answered about, how to do something in Terraform or how to do something in Kubernetes or whatever they need help with. And I see that happen on a regular basis, and that people's lives are made better by that community. So, really excited about that. And
I feel like that's a big moment. Community. That's a big moment in any of these communities. I remember when I started the Boston operations meetup, which was pretty much the same idea. Like individually, like people in the area would have like one-on-one coffees and lunches and stuff. And then we finally were like, well, wait a second. Why don't we just get everyone together? We're sysadmins. We're trying to optimize everything. Like, let's do it all in one fell swoop, right? And
wait, but how do you automate a meetup, Pete?
Oh, that's so funny. We would like get together, and I think it was the second meetup we did where someone joined, came to the meetup. They had just left their job and they're like chatting with folks and essentially like made the introduction. They showed up to the next one. And they're like, oh yeah, like I joined this company. And I was like, oh, how did you find about them? How did you hear about them? I was like at the last meetup, I'm just like, yeah, it's great. It's like those things when you're like, okay, like this isn't just a bunch of nerds complaining about computers. Like it's actually helping people out, and do cool things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Denver CoffeeOps, I think, and it is all still virtual due to all the pandemic. But
so Seattle.
It happens just early enough that I don't make it most of the time, even though I'm up and awake, and it's just the timing hasn't been good for me yet. But I'm endeavoring to make one.
Yeah, it's been cool to see other CoffeeOps start out of the Seattle CoffeeOps meetup. So
yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
I mean, like one of the things that I love is the HangOps community and how much that has helped the broader DevOps SRE community and these things like CoffeeOps and so on. It's pretty great. So is the CoffeeOps meetup happening in December? Is it weekly? Is it monthly?
It's every other Friday.
Every other Friday?
Yes. So I think you posted a link to the schedule on Meetup. So
yeah, I'll
and it needs to be a Zoom, so it's virtual. I think we have some people who are technically outside of Seattle who are a part of it, which is fine. So yeah.
I mean, I've been to Seattle. Does that count?
It counts. You can join. We'd welcome you.
Excellent. I might be able to make it. Cool. So, so you went from Microsoft. You were at Nordstrom for a while. You did some Windows. I know you did Windows stuff at Nordstrom. Are you predominantly working on Windows in your career? Like, have you branched out?
Yeah, that's yes, I have. So that's interesting. So started out my career definitely Windows heavy, working at Microsoft, and then I worked. I sort of abbreviated things, but after doing support for in product support as an intern. I moved on and worked on Microsoft Outlook, and that was pretty much Windows at the end of the 90s. So, and so I was a software tester, so I learned a lot there about debugging issues and things like that, and tracking down hard bugs and stuff like that. So, and then I moved on to working at a large bank and doing basically all of the group policy settings for about 70,000 workstations and all of the ATMs. And those were
how that had to be wild, because
yeah.
You change a group those group policies apply pretty quickly from my recollection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were there any like close calls?
Yeah, they're more than a close call. So yes, you test in your test environment, but of course your test environment doesn't look exactly like production. It's never going to, right? Especially at that scale. So I pushed out a security change, and I can't remember, it was to IE or something like that, but I don't remember exactly what it was, but it broke all of so the tellers have these teller cash dispensers. And so that's like when you go into talk to a teller and you're like, I need $100 in cash. So they punch in $100. It's like an ATM, but it's for the teller. And so it would count and spit out the right amount of cash. And so I broke all of the teller cash dispensers across the entire US. And that was a fun outage call. I think the VP was yelling on the call. My coworker is like, just don't say anything. And so I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get yelled at.
Wow. Yeah, that's probably a special level of the 5 whys.
Oh man. And there was, it was a bank. So there were like the change approval board was like a 2-week process with a 10-page Word document for every change that you had to fill out. It was pretty ridiculous. So so there was like a regular review board, and then for high risk changes, there was another review board. And, of course they didn't exactly know what your change was in particular. So it was more of a formality. Anyway, so that was like, I guess, Pete, to your point here about group policy being pretty fast, it was an easy fix, but it was still down for, 30, 40 minutes or whatever. It was still kind of a major deal.
There's like the recollections of like, making changes with your configuration management tool that affect like login access and things like that. And, in my I feel like it was like in my first job at an ISP, we also had a hosting environment, it was always taught like, oh yeah, you're going to go make a change to that. Like log in to SSH here, then log into SSH here and do the stuff. Right.
Oh yeah.
Because like, don't like, make sure you have an active connection, because there is no like ILO whatever port to connect to when it goes sideways.
Man, I haven't thought about ILOs in a long time. Man.
I don't know where,
right?
like that word has been living rent free in my head for probably 2 decades. And I'm very annoyed by that I was able to literally come up with that right now. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Tell you
that
what
goes to the
birthday
conversation we had
is,
yesterday.
Sorry. Exactly.
The things that live rent free in our heads that we wish they didn't.
Well, I kind of want to ask this question because Doug, I assume you worked with a lot of like bare metal systems, right? Like non-cloud, like servers and data centers and things like that. Was it like? And the joke question is like, I feel like there was a default password to the Dell management interface that is like burned into the memories of all like Dell users for a while, but it's like that one actually I don't have in my head, but the second I hear it, I'll probably start laughing because I will remember it. But
I think it's Hunter 2.
Oh god,
isn't that where that came from?
Oh my god,
totally gotta be where that comes from.
So Joshua, I want to get back to your question briefly. So did a lot of Windows stuff, and at the bank that was certainly all Windows. All of the ATMs ran Windows 95 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But
not in 1995 though. We're talking.
No. This is like 2003 or something like that. I don't remember. And the ATMs would log in automatically with admin rights. So that was fun. But when I moved to Nordstrom, I was supporting Windows for sure on the Windows platform team, and then jumped over to be a .NET developer because I wanted to get some web experience. That was a great thing about Nordstrom was that you could just say, hey, I want to go do this thing. And they would try to make that happen for you. And I wasn't certainly not qualified to be a .NET developer. But they paired me up with a senior developer who was very good at mentoring. And so it was great to have that chance. And then moved on to the build engineering team because they needed some help with that. And then started the chef team at Nordstrom. And that was when I really moved into Linux and Linux support and things like that. So I've done quite a bit of, now I haven't done Windows in a while. Mostly it's almost all Linux all the time. So
was there, when did you transition like from your expertise where you were predominantly working with like bare metal systems into like full cloud? Like, I don't think Allma is the first place where you're like 100% cloud, or
no.
am I wrong? Is that...
No, because I did AWS consulting for 5.5 years. So that was all cloud all the time.
All cloud all the time.
All the cloud all the time. And all AWS all the time. So, but even before that, when I worked at Nordstrom, they were, they made that transition quite a while ago to the cloud. And so, got a lot of exposure to AWS there. And so I still remember my first CloudFormation template, which is, 10 years ago or something like that. And it was so complex. I'm like, okay, this is kind of the way I approach learning technical things is I'm like, I'm going to make a CloudFormation template that now all it's going to do is create a security group. That's it. Because what I'd seen was all of these examples of CloudFormation templates or how to learn CloudFormation that they would give you this giant thing that was like a full lamp stack or whatever. And
this was when it was JSON too. This wasn't even like they had kind of cleaned it up with YAML, right?
Yeah. This is when it was JSON. And then it was so complex and there's so many like things that are tied together and whatever and dependencies and it's like I can't, it's too complicated. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start with a single security group and then I'm gonna add an instance that refers to that security group, and then I'm gonna add a load balancer or whatever. So kind of building on it. So
yeah, I remember our first chef examples and walkthroughs were these full lamp stacks, right? Like it was the WordPress example, we had a Rails application example, and that was it was so much to digest, and getting down to that more simple example. But what do people use for simple examples for learning these days? Like, are there any? Aren't you supposed to run everything on a Kubernetes cluster somewhere?
Man, I've tried learning Kubernetes.
Well, Kelsey Houtower will tell you how to learn it the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, this is what I kind of come to realize around like the Kubernetes, which is it's a Heroku done poorly. But as someone who just like oftentimes like I just want to run a thing. Like I just want to run a thing. And like you go to AWS, running a thing is not easy, right?
No.
Not easy. My most recent usage of Amazon stuff is very much like product-y analytics stuff and like data, like using it's like put data in S3 and use all of its tools that stitch it all together, like data glue and brew, data brew and glue and all those things. And honestly, like works amazingly well. And it's like click and click, magic happens. But the second you step outside of that safe area and you're like, I want to run my website. Like, but not like a static website, like a run a lamp stack or a rail stack. Like that is so supremely hard to do. You're going to be introed into VPC and now you have to deal with that. And like, why can't I access my database? Well, it's in a private VPC and yours, like everything is just so hard. It makes sense why people are like, yeah, Kubernetes sounds great because I can just shove a YAML and like magic happens on the other side. It's just like the poor sysadmins that have to like run the Kubernetes.
Yeah. I really think AWS does people just like is kind of a trade-off. They do a disservice, I think, in the user guides and all the intro videos or whatever. They're like, just go through the console and they have a wizard and it's easy to get like an ECS thing up and running or EKS or whatever it is, right? Glue. But now you want to productionize it, right? Now you want to replicate the thing you did in, 3 environments and you want infrastructure as code and all that. And then you're just left sort of figuring that out on your own. It'd be nice if you could say like, oh, I went through the wizard. Now give me the CloudFormation or the Terraform that would do that thing. Instead, you have to kind of reverse engineer it and try to figure it out. So it's that it works on my machine kind of a thing. You know,
it works on my console.
Yeah.
Yeah, the complexity, like you used your early example of starting with the security group and then adding an instance to the security group. And a lot of what they're doing is they're hiding the complexity while still making your stuff secure, right? That's why you have all the VPCs and everything.
Yeah.
But it also makes it difficult to replicate that out to, like you said, to run in multiple environments and regions and, you know, being able to automate that.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Emar used to have a way to select a cluster and have it spit out an AWS XYZ command to replicate it. Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
That's the best is when
I wish they
you
do more of that.
Yeah. Right?
I feel like that Microsoft has done a pretty good job in this. I think they're still doing it where you can create like an Exchange thing or Active Directory or whatever. And then there's a button that says, show me the PowerShell, basically.
Well, honestly, that's the thing. Like when Amazon came out with their like junky Cloud Shell thing that actually couldn't talk to anything in a VPC, you know, everyone looked at it and was just like, this sucks. And not like it sucks because it's an Amazon thing that sucks. It's like, it sucks because Microsoft did it better than you by a long shot. Like they,
Right.
you know, Microsoft set a bar here and Amazon was like, this is like mailed it in on that one.
Right.
And that's like hard to say for a lot of Microsoft. Like a lot of stuff on Azure is not that great actually, but like, man, they really crushed it with their Cloud Shell.
Yeah. I can tell you that after working at an AWS consultancy for 5 years, I don't think we use Cloud Shell. At least I never use Cloud Shell.
I tried to use it once because I was like, you know, trying to do the right thing of like, oh, this could be like a Bastion host replacement, or this could be like a cool thing. But it's like, I couldn't access stuff in my VPC. I'm like, why does this exist? Like, I don't get it.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So Doug, what led you to Allma?
Pete,
after all.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Actually, that's a good story. I think it started when I had back in April when I came on board and I was like, I'm at Allma doing things.
You posted on Twitter.
Yeah, I posted on Twitter.
Yeah,
and you'd slid in my DMs and you were like, kind of like startup. You know, you had done like the big company thing for a while, and we're kind of curious on like what would it be like, kind of really early stage, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it was like right as I was talking to you, we were like later stage in interviewing someone else for essentially the same role.
Right. Yeah, but I think so. I mean, that's how I got connected, and I have to say that. And I'm not getting paid to say this, but the interview process is probably one of the best interview processes that I've ever had. In terms of like, I find tech interviewing to be just kind of atrocious for so many companies where you're doing like whiteboard coding and someone's sitting there with their arms folded looking at you or whatever, or the whole process, or they don't give you any feedback or anything. And so the Allma actually has a really good process in terms of like every interview, they had an outline of here's kind of the signal we're looking for. Here's the purpose of the interview. And the take home assignment was super clear. And everyone is super friendly and kind. So just a great interview process, which made me want to join. Right. So, I think as far as the reasons, I was really, consulting is you learn so many things, and you're dealing with different customers all the time. And so you're having to learn different customers' environments all the time. I was really ready to move to a smaller company, and kind of early stage, and have a chance to make a big impact. and also build something over time. With consulting, it's so much you're doing like proof of concepts, or you're on the project for 2 months and then you're done. And if they're great, the customer's great, then you don't get to work with them anymore. And if they're not so great, then you're like, oh, good, I have a different customer. But if they are great, you're like, oh, I really wish I could keep working with them. So it's nice to build something over time.
When I had done consulting, and obviously like different type of consulting, like when I was at Duckbill Group, it's kind of advisory level consulting.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating work because of the scope of and how wide Amazon is. But you know, consulting in general, not even just that company, but a lot of places, it always kind of felt very repetitive to me. I'm curious if you had similar things where you would kind of go in, and were you did you find it repetitive, or is it just the nature of like the companies are so different and kind of what they want at the execution level is so different because you're able to go that next level down versus being at the high level of like advising?
Yeah. So at one strategy we did the strategic consulting as well, but a lot of projects were more, technical implementation focused. And so then there's a lot of variety in what customers need. So I did everything from setting up sort of enterprise, multi-account, multi-VPC structures to the one of the last projects I was on. I was embedded in a customer's SRE team, and so did quite a bit of that. And then for another customer, did a sort of top-down review of their costs and made a bunch of recommendations on cost reduction and things like that. So a lot of variety in the projects for what we did, for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always kind of curious about it because it's like there's levels, right? You advise people, and it's like if you're advising people on taking certain actions, like those best practices are going to look really similar across usually a lot of different companies. But that next level down, I feel like that's where things can get pretty wide.
Yeah, you find out when you're giving advice like that, the advice in general, the generic advice is the same, but then customers have different reactions. Like they're like, oh, we have some scar from 5 years ago, and we can't do it that way, even though it's the best practice, right? So then you have to kind of work around that. So that makes it challenging and different, for sure.
Oh, we have business reasons.
Yeah. It means that they had some outage 3 years ago, and they're like, we're never going to do anything that even remotely resembles, the thing that caused the outage.
Right. Because nothing ever changes.
Right.
There's certainly not improvements in systems that would make you able to do those things in a safe and secure manner in the future.
Right. Yep.
Especially in the cloud where it's somebody else's computer, so they get to control all the back end stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Excellent. What are you working on? So you started a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Yes, a couple weeks ago. Yes.
So what have you dived into so far? Here at Allma.
Well, one of the first projects I'm working on is doing a migration of our CI/CD processes. So, so switching from one system to another in terms of how the app is built and tested and deployed and stuff like that. So that's been exciting. It's been cool to see. What's interesting about a small company is that how fast they move. So Allma, I'm like, wow, things are happening really fast. And it's really great because you could just pop in the Slack channel and say, hey, can you do this thing? Can you review my change? And they review the change within 5-10 minutes or whatever. Or, hey, I think we should, ask for a decision. I think we should do it this way. And then you get thumbs up or thumbs down like pretty immediately.
It's I kind of joke. It's like we're playing with live ammunition here.
Yeah.
And what's actually like what I literally love is that as I'm not on the engineering team, and I don't have a like deep knowledge of our code base, but I'm able to go in and find places where it's like, oh, I need to make this change in this place, and I can submit my pull request. And yeah, to your same point, it's like I can submit it, I can follow the process. Someone else is like, yeah, that looks great, you did it correctly, and then like it just goes right. And so this is obviously something that's not new, but it's again great to see it in practice where 10 years ago, there's like getting the ability for a non-engineer to be able to commit to the code base and get their changes out within a very short period of time. I don't know. It just tickles me that it's like so easy to do, even so many years later as we've been doing that.
Well, yeah. And that we even have people who are non-engineers that are able to make changes to the code base. Like that's, I think, is a fairly unique startup and early phase company dynamic.
Yeah, I think
you definitely higher percentage. Yeah, and I think that's been my experience in startups too, where it's like the early in those early startups, your percentage of engineering as a percentage of the business will be dramatically higher than later stage. I know some of my other startups, it was like 50, 60, 70% of the company being engineers or people who could write code. And then obviously like later on in your growth, maybe it's closer to 20 to 30%, right? As you kind of scale out. So it is cool to see that when you are so heavy on the engineering side, and how that also impacts, the culture and how things are able to be, built and deployed and, made available.
Yeah. So Doug, you just onboarded here, and you also worked with a number of customers through consulting, and you've worked at a couple of large behemoth enterprise organizations.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on onboarding new technical people, whether they're software developers, their operations teams, or that? Like, what are some pros and cons to either large organizations working as a consultant or a new startup?
I don't know. I think what I've discovered through that process of taking new jobs and being onboarded or onboarding folks onto my team is that I don't know that there's a particular advantage or disadvantage of a startup versus an enterprise. I really think it's that when you're onboarding, do you have a manager who cares about you and wants you to have a good onboarding experience, and or maybe the manager is, they pair you with another experienced engineer who is sort of your onboarding guide and is available to answer questions, to give you context. So when you're onboarding in a new company, there's a ton of context that people have about how the business works, why decisions were made, why certain technology choices were made, that sort of thing. And as a new employee, you don't have that context. And so you really need someone you can just ask questions and they can say, oh, well, we made that decision because of this or whatever. So I don't know that onboarding, it is a lot different necessarily. It's really just, do you have a manager who pairs you with someone who cares about you having a good onboarding experience, really? So I will say, I guess one other thing that we did this. So we had at One Strategy, we onboarded some folks who were really just starting out in their careers, either switching from another career or just out of college. And so we had a formal like 8 to 10 week process where we had, and these were people who were pretty much brand new to AWS. And so we needed to get them up to speed before we put them on customer projects. And so we had weekly assignments. So we'd say, okay, we want you to build this thing in CloudFormation, or we want you to do this other AWS thing. Like week one was like create an S3 bucket and host a static website. So, we had a formalized sort of week by week plan, and then they would do the assignment and then they would demo it and get some feedback. So they get practice with interacting with folks and presenting technical things and talking about them. So all the skills that they would need for consulting. And so we worked pretty hard on that. And that was pretty helpful. So.
Indeed. Yeah. I like the idea of pairing with somebody, especially early on, and making sure that you're up and running. That can be a challenge in early phase startups, depending on how early phase it is. You might not have a peer to pair with.
Well, that's true. And I think the other thing is that larger companies may have the luxury of, taking more of a chance on early employees because there's just more people that can support them or whatever. And so for an early stage startup, if they're like, you're our first infrastructure hire and we need you to be a rock star from day one, and we don't have time for you to learn Terraform and ECS and all these other things. So that can be challenging, right? Whereas at a larger company, it can be like, hey, you don't know some of the things we need you to know. It's okay because you have 2 months to figure it out. So
right, yeah.
Yeah.
But that new laptop setup, right? I got to go through that twice here because the laptop I got my first week died within that first week. So I had to do it all over again.
So now, Doug, when you came on board, were the new 14, 16, whatever the new MacBooks, were those out yet? So like when I came on board, the M1 MacBook was like out. And so I was like, well, like I'm going to go for that one. And, battery life is incredible, but like, it's always the fun part of joining a new job is like, you get to like upgrade to like the latest and greatest, stuff. What did you go with?
I was offered a refurbished laptop. So it struck me that Allma was being frugal. So like, that's great. So
considering the cost of some of these. Yeah. Considering the cost of some of these. Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I got an i9 Intel MacBook for my replacement.
Okay. Cool.
My first one, I think, was an M1, but yeah,
I've heard they're really
I hope
fast.
You didn't get my refurbished one.
I don't know. It works great. So
okay, good.
It does the things I needed to do. So that's the important part.
Zoom didn't freeze up in the middle of it.
It runs Zoom. It runs VS Code. Okay. It runs a browser.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
For sure. So I actually have a question for you guys. If that's cool. Can ask questions.
Do we normally have questions
we
back
might.
on this, Joshua? I don't know.
I might answer questions.
Is this allowed? Hold on a second. I would love to hear a question.
So I'm really curious. So one of the things that was really interesting to me, when I was hired on as a consultant, I didn't really know how consulting worked. And so that was a learning experience. One of the primary things that I learned was sales. When you're doing consulting, especially at a small consulting company, you have to do sales. And generally, you're brought onto a customer sales call as the technical resource, technical engineer, and the customer wants to ask you questions about your experience, and like they want to describe their problem, and they want to have you sort of say, "Yep, that's very doable. Here's my approach," that sort of thing. So, as an engineer, I don't know about your experience, but my experience was I was very prejudiced against salespeople. Very much like, engineers are where it's at, and salespeople are just like used car salesmen. And I learned a strong appreciation for the role that sales plays in a company. Like salespeople are the reason that that we have customers. Mm-hmm. And so I learned to really appreciate that and be fairly good at it. I wasn't a full-time salesperson, but certainly participating in lots of sales calls and that sort of thing.
Probably acting as like a pre-sales engineer type of role.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have dedicated pre-sales engineers. Like that's what we did. Mm-hmm. So if you were a little bit more senior, then you were invited to participate in sales calls and to help the salesperson to answer any questions the customer had. So
I actually did pre-sales stuff when I was at Chef because we had not hired any pre-sales engineers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time 1 year on airplanes and in customer locations. This is the pre-Zoom era of everything is always remote, which, led to a lot of very packed weeks, like a marathon running around in New York in August 1 year. And I don't know if you've been to New York City in August, but it is not air conditioned outside. Yeah. So, and it was it was a lot of that and a lot of presenting like the chef 101 to rooms full of customers and that sort of thing. And it was, it gave me a new appreciation for the work that technical pre-sales folks do, and the kinds of solutions that, solutions architects design to accommodate customer issues and to solve those problems. And that said, I hope I never in my life again have to fill out an RFP from a major large enterprise organization.
Yeah. But actually,
those spreadsheets are huge.
Yeah. That's the hard process. My question's a little broader, which is really not just strictly about sales, but for me, that was the thing that I was like, oh, this is way outside my comfort zone. And I actually changed my perspective and had to learn something that was not just like, here, learn how to use this thing in Terraform, but no, you're going to learn how to do this thing that's completely outside your comfort zone. So I'm curious for you guys, is there something in your career where you took a job and they're like, hey, we need you to do this thing that's way outside your sort of area of expertise, and what was that thing?
So we're doing that right now. So I'm doing these live stream events, and I've never done this kind of thing before. So that is it was definitely an outside the comfort zone sort of thing for me. But fortunately, so I'm an introvert, but I don't have to go travel anywhere and be in front of people presenting and like have that energy drain. So I get some of that energy back from doing this. And then I also get to talk to really awesome people, and that is super cool. And then, get people in the chat asking questions and having conversations, and it leads to other conversations like off in the Hangops Slack or on Twitter. And it's been a lot of fun.
I would say that every place I go to, I feel like, especially with startups, it's like whatever job you're hired for, it really doesn't matter, because 6 months later, you're doing something different, 6 months later, like everything changes so quickly at startups. It's always how it is, which is what I love about doing them. What I'm always fascinated with is just how much there is to learn. So I love learning stuff. Like, I just love to just like, I have a general level of uncomfort with not knowing a thing, and there's so much information out there, and it's so easy to learn things that I'll just go and figure it out. My in-laws will often ask, well, how did you learn how to cook a turkey? Or I took over turkey cooking this Thanksgiving.
That's
and
right.
Like, how did you like know how to do this? And it's like, I go and learn online. Right. And so one example I'll give you, when I went to Duckbill Group, was I thought I had a really deep knowledge of how Amazon charges for things, because I had been managing that since Amazon started. I mean, since like 2009, like not quite, but very early. It's, and then it's only when you start really diving in further and going that like next level down that you're like, wow, there's so much. Like sure, a lot, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, and that iceberg is just massive. And every place I join, I get to kind of flex, especially in the startup world. Like, you always get to flex your muscle in different ways, because like you can identify like, wow, there's this thing that no one is doing right now, and I think the company needs to do it. And to your point on like moving fast, it's just like, you don't have to like wait for permission to go and make a thing better. You just get to go do it, even if you don't know how. And I think that's been that's been something that has repeated itself throughout my career, is that, especially in the startup land, is that ability to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that was one of the things that I really appreciated about consulting, was that I had to learn how to do consulting, which is a particular thing where you really need to gain the customer's trust that you know what you're doing, even when you don't. And that was hard for me, because I'm always, my instinct is always to be honest. And so on sales calls, I would want to say, I really have no idea how to do that. But you really can't do that. You don't want to lie, but you have to say, I've done something similar over here. And I know we have folks on the team who have done this. And so, I'm confident that I can figure it out. And you start every project with, I've never done this particular thing that is a deliverable that you have to deliver to the customer. Or, my boss was like, hey, I need you to be in the sales call. I'm like, I don't know how to do sales. And he's like, well, too bad. So I got
whatever.
So
I actually got a job. The first consulting job I ever got, it was very much a Windows consulting type shop. This was like mid-aughts. So like as was the style, right? SANs and Exchange servers and Active Directory, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up getting the job because I had prior experience with Novell NetWare and GroupWise from a previous company I was at. And they had an engagement they were trying to win, which was to set up a GroupWise high availability like cluster setup. This was like 2006.
Yeah.
And they hired me because like I had this experience, but like my experience with GroupWise wasn't as an administrator. It was as like, we had a tool that integrated with GroupWise. So I had like a really light knowledge of it. Yeah. And I told them that, and they're like, no, it's fine. We got you this book. If you could just go figure this out. And I was like, okay. And it was like, that's when I realized the trick of consulting is to not be an expert in anything. Yeah. It is to be able to learn quicker. You're almost being paid to learn quicker than they could do it. Right. And as long as you're like one step ahead of them, you're good. You only need that one step.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that as a consultant, oftentimes you're being paid to learn faster because you can learn faster than the client, right? And I think certainly that if you have a background of knowledge in the subject area, and that helps you to learn things faster because you're already familiar with IAM. So learning a new service, I already understand the IAM portion of that or whatever it is. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's my other favorite one is when I was the sales engineer on a call, or so I thought. And we go into this meeting, and the sales guy who was selling the service, they were asking us like, what do you guys know about SCCM 2007? And the guy looked over at me, the sales guy looked over at me and was like, oh yeah, Pete is our resident expert on SCCM 2007.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, on my laptop typing in, what is SCCM 2007 as he said that. And then I figured it out, and I was like, oh, okay. And I will say it was like those moments where it's like you go from like, I don't know what this is, to actually like learning it, deploying it, and making like the customer really happy. Like those are my memories that I'm like, that was a really fun project.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I still love that one. I'm still friends with him too. I give him crap for that all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because salespeople want to close the deal, right? So they're like, yeah, we've totally done that before. Or Pete is our resident expert, right? So
on everything, really.
Right.
It happens.
But mostly on smoking meat and cooking barbecue.
Yeah, smoking meat. I actually we're getting on to the off-topic stage of this thing, which we do want to ask you some very off-topic things. And my favorite off-topic that I'll start, since we are talking about cooking, is I had the most Pete level of injury possible.
Okay, I'm worried now, Pete.
This 100% tracks with me and what most people know of me because of the persona I live on Twitter, and that I like to cook a lot. Oh yeah. No, you can't endorse me for SCCM 2007, and don't you dare. So this weekend it was Hanukkah. It was Sunday, I think was the first night, and as is tradition, you just need to cook stuff in oil like latkes or something called sufgan yot, which is just jelly donuts. And so I made latkes, which I love to make. They're a lot of fun, and they freeze really well. They stay good for a long time. And so Sunday I was like making latkes like crazy, and I'm like standing up, and I'm like kind of bent over a bunch of pans and stuff. And I kind of felt my back like getting a little sore. You know how it is, like standing on a hard floor for a while. Sure. And then I like bent over to reach something just a tiny little bit, just enough that I felt like that twinge you get. It is now Thursday. My back still hurts. I literally hurt my back cooking latkes.
It's because you're old, Pete.
Yes, it is.
It's true.
That's my contribution to the off-topic portion.
Yes. So speaking of the off-topic period of our show, Doug, what is the flavor town you like to go to? It's single malt.
Oh,
is it from a certain county or from a certain island?
I wasn't sure what flavor town meant, but
obscure references is what I specialize in.
Is Flavortown obscure? Is Guy Fieri a obscure? Okay, sorry. Just go for it. Go for it, Doug.
Yeah. Well, yes, I do like Scotch. and started out with bourbon, and now I've kind of graduated to Scotch. I don't know if that's how it works, but I think a lot of people do that. And so, yeah, my wife and I recently got a chance to go down to Portland, and we went to the Multnomah Whiskey Library in Portland, which is probably one of the best whiskey bars in the U.S. And I've been there before. It's lovely. We went down for a day trip, but when I had some time off between jobs, and it was just super great. We had got a flight of 4 scotches, and the thing to do when you go to the Multnomah Whiskey Library is you don't pick out scotch. You just say, "I would like some scotch, please," and they pick it up for you. And they always do a fabulous job.
It's an amazing, it's definitely like a bucket list item for anyone. Honestly, anyone who likes like cocktails, they'll do crazy cocktails or just anything like that. But that's what I love about that place, is that I can go in and basically is like, here's what I like. I like really peaty stuff. Yeah. And I don't want to spend more than X. Yeah. And they'll say, "Have you ever had blah, 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 blah?" And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, and they just bring it over. It's fabulous.
Yeah, speaking of smoking, I tried some rock oyster, which I'd never heard of, and it was actually really, really good.
That's a Scotch?
Yeah, it's a Scotch, rock oyster. I don't have a link to it, but I'm sure you can find one. And
probably.
Yeah, it was a blend, which I don't usually gravitate towards, but it was really, really good. They also had a compass box. I think you like some compass box, Josh.
Oh yeah, the Peat Monster is my favorite.
I haven't tried that one. I haven't tried that one. Yeah, I do like all different kinds of Scotch, smoky and non, more Highlands and also Islay. But yeah.
My wife got me into single malts, but from there I also tried some blended, and Compass Box has some wonderful blended scotches. She was telling me she went to Scotland for a vacation some years ago, and a American tourist shows up in this bar that she was in, and the guy asks, "Yeah, I'd like to try one of each that starts with Glen." And
here's 100 right here.
The bartender is like, "Would you like to start with this shelf or this shelf?"
Oh man.
There's like 150 different Glen scotches, and it wasn't just because there was multiple different years of Glenfiddich.
So what's your favorite Glen Scotch then?
I've only had like the ones that are commonly available in the US myself, so I don't know. I don't have a specific, but yeah, I don't really have a specific on those. My favorite single malt is Lafroig, probably.
Oh, okay. So you like the
or the Octomore.
Yeah, I haven't had either of those. Bruichladdich Octomore it's pricey. It's like one that when you go to the whiskey library, you have one of, but it's very well known for being extremely peaty.
Yeah, they have the parts per million amount of peat on the bottles, and I bought the one that had the highest at my local liquor store.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember which one it is. I think it's the 8.3.
They change it. There's like
ppm.
Their numbers. It's interesting. They'll have like the 9.2 or the 8.1 or I'm sure they have some sort of meaning. But a friend of the stream, Ben Rockwood, was here.
Yes,
and his background was full of quite a few different boxes of scotches that he would collect over time. And he actually introduced me to one called Glenlivet's Caribbean Reserve, and it's basically Glenlivet in a rum cask, I think rum cask finish. And I guess he was saying that like when they created it, the idea behind it was as a mixer, like as a base for a cocktail, some sort of drink, for a Scotch cocktail that you would add other stuff to. And he went and tried it, and he was like, it's so like it really blew me away. And it's very like well priced. And I saw it somewhere, so I went to go try it. And like same thing, like just by itself with like an ice cube is all you need. It's beautiful. It's so good. But I actually did the reverse. I started off a Scotch person because I went to a party and I had Macallan for the first time, which is like really if you like sherried whiskey, it's good. But if you don't like sherried whiskey, you're gonna hate it. It's a love or hate situation. Yeah. And I did the Scotch thing for quite a few years, and then I more recently actually moved into bourbon, and I've gotten involved with there's a kind of a local liquor store who buys barrels from places, and you can get single barrels of different things, and they're really fun because like every barrel has all these subtle differences, which is pretty neat. So just chasing flavor town. I like that, Joshua.
Have you tried Blantons? And that's one of my favorite bourbons.
Blantons is actually my favorite bourbon, and I'm going to go and see if I can find something real quick, and I'm going to be right back.
Okay.
Oh, he's going all the way off.
I guess he's going to his kitchen to get some bourbon or something.
Probably, yeah. I mean, my my liquor cabinet is under the counter in the kitchen, so it's not easily accessible at the moment.
So, everyone, I don't know if anyone knows. So, Blantons. The caps. They're horses,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
But what you may not realize
Kentucky Derby horses, right?
Is the horses on the caps are in the different stages of their gait. It's running. And very small that you will not be able to see on my camera is a little letter. And there are letters that they spell out Blantons, Blantons.
Oh, I didn't know that. Today I learned.
And so it means you can collect all of them if you spend enough time and money to go and find them all. It took me years because there's one of them, one of the letters is the rare one, and I can't tell you which one it is now. And the rest are normal. And so someone had told me about this. They were at this bar, and the bar had stacked up all the horses, and they had them for each letter, and each letter had dozens and dozens, and one of them only had like one. They were collecting over time. And so I just said to myself, like, you know what? I really like Blantons, and I'm just going to see if I can find them all. So I'd go into a liquor store, and I'd open the box, and I'd look to see what the letter was. And I eventually found them all. It was just years and years. And I kept them in my little Blantons bag, because someday I'd love to just like put them on like you could actually buy these at the Blantons online store.
That's not nearly as much fun.
No, not nearly as fun. So I kind of want to do like a little like wood shelf thing that I can just stick them on, because they are really cool. They're these beautiful brass horses, and when you put them next to each other, it's the horse at different stages of running, based on Blantons.
That is super cool. I can't actually. I don't know if it's an East Coast West Coast thing. I don't know if it's easy to get Blantons over in the East Coast, but it's super hard. At least in Washington, it is very hard to get Blantons.
Really?
Like, I've had maybe 2 bottles.
Oh,
maybe.
Wow.
And both times I got it in Montana.
So we this was actually my secret power for being able to find them all was I was working for Dine in New Hampshire, and I would drive to New Hampshire every day, and New Hampshire has like the border liquor stores that I would stop at, and I'd open all the boxes to see if I could find one, and then keep coming. So that was the secret superpower there that would help me find it.
Nice.
That is amazing. Well, friends, it looks as though we have run out of our hour time slot. Thank you, Doug, for joining us today and for sharing some of your story and
that's great.
Some of your experience with whiskey.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you all out there for joining us. We'll be back again next week. And don't forget that also in a couple weeks, we will have our next Disruptions and Discoveries on the 15th. That's our online meetup, and you can join us there as well. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Joshua. Thanks, Pete.